Welcome to MCN long-term test video time, and this is all about our 2022 MCN long-term test fleet. And today's video is all about Alison. Hello Alison.
Hello Michael.
And her Honda NT1100. So you've written 10 things you like and 10 things you don't like about this bike.
Yes, that's
and
right.
I'm going to ask you about them. But first of all, just tell me a little bit about when you got this bike and how many miles you've done on it.
Yeah, no worries. I took delivery of the bike in February of 2022. And
Where are we now?
It's now January.
January.
Yeah. I've been running it basically for around 11 months.
Yeah.
And in that time I've done 6,000 miles, mainly touring miles, not so much commuting on this one.
Yeah. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts, because I rode this last year at its launch. It's been very popular. See a lot of them in mainland Europe. It's kind of a low rider touring Africa Twin, isn't it?
Yes, exactly that. It's sort of like a sibling of the Africa Twin.
That's it. Right, let's do your good list first.
Excellent.
The top 10.
Start with the positives.
Start with the positives. So we start with number 10. The screen offers decent amount of protection and the wind noise is minimal.
Yeah, what I found with this one, my previous bike, I had the Tracer last in 2021, and the Tracer is a notoriously bad screen. This one offers a little bit more protection. It's a little bit wider. It's also got the benefit of the rather strange looking
wind effectors
here as well, which does make a difference.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's relatively large, and with it being movable, it's a manual move on this one, but with it being movable, you can get it to the height that fits you.
When you say the Tracer had a bad screen, you mean noisy, don't you?
Noisy, and yeah, it was awful.
And this isn't as noisy?
It isn't as noisy. There's still an element of noise, but there is with all screens.
Okay, number 9 thing, the 9th thing you like, the centre stand, which is standard, so it makes it easy to lube the chain and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Centre stand's perfect. If you've got the chain to look after, being able to hop it up onto the centre stand makes life a lot simpler, rather than having to do that awful dance with a can of chain lube. Yeah.
No, that's good. It's a good standard feature, that. Number 8, pillion comfort. It's comfortable, decent grab rails. It's a bit squished when the top box is on the bike. All your luggage is down there, by the way, isn't it? Which comes standard on this, doesn't it? But we'll come on to that later. Yeah,
I did a pillion test where I took my husband on the back, much to his disgust, but hey ho, that's where we're at.
How big's your husband?
He is 5'8", so 2 inches shorter than me. I'm 5'10".
Yeah.
So he fitted on the back really well, and he found it relatively comfortable.
What kind of build are we talking about? Is he a slight man?
He's a little Welshman. He's about 11.5, 12 stone.
Right, okay.
So he's quite petite.
Yeah.
But what I also did was flipped it on its head, and I spent a day on the back as the pillion, because in a previous life, when I didn't ride, I used to go on the back of my husband a lot on our sports bikes.
998.
998S.
Oh, right, for you than me.
But yeah, I travelled on the back, and I had a whole day out with one of my colleagues and spent the day as the pillion, and it was great. I found that the comfort was perfect, really low, easy seat to get onto. The panniers, you can't quite see here because they're laying on the floor, but they've been designed specifically with a sculpt out area so that you can, your leg slots into them nicely.
Yeah.
The only thing I did find, I've added a kit where I've got a top box as well on the bike, and it did then actually make the seat space a little bit restricted, so it was sitting into my back.
Some of the room.
Yeah, a little bit, but I think if you're a less confident pillion, it actually would give you an air of confidence, because you know you're not going to topple off the back having it there. But from me, on a personal level, I found it a little bit cramped. Maybe as well because the person I was on the pillion with was a colleague rather than husband, so obviously that...
He was a bigger colleague.
He was a larger colleague, and also you're not quite sure where you want to grab hold of him.
No.
Anyway.
Which colleague was it?
I went out with Justin Hazeldean.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
He's quite grabbable though.
He's quite grabbable, but I didn't want a HR situation.
No,
definitely not.
Pillion comfort is very important on bikes like these, aren't they? Because a lot of them get ridden two up.
Well, that's why I did a little bit more deeper research on it, because it was one of the questions that was being raised by people who've got in touch with me, and I did really feel that this is a bike people are going to look at and buy with a view to taking a pillion on board.
100%. Right, number 7, suspension. It's comfortable, not bouncy.
Yeah,
that's what you want.
Absolutely. I've ran it in standard setup where it's came out the factory. I haven't jigged around with anything at all on it.
There's no electronic suspension or anything on this, is it? It's
No,
pretty basic.
It's all pretty basic, but I haven't had any issues. There's been no pogo in as you go across the fen roads.
You haven't touched it at all?
No, I haven't touched it at all.
So it's all on standard setting. So it's got some preload adjustment in the front. It's got preload with a wheel at the back.
Yep.
Which is good. Number 6, so the things on the floor over there, the panniers. They're a decent size. You like the fact that they come with inner bags, so you can they can be taken off the bike when you're on trips away.
Yeah, absolutely. Each of the different boxes comes with its own inner bag, which it's actually quite an important thing. Yeah, it was part of it. The inner bags came with the luggage.
Yeah.
But when you're actually stopping somewhere, the last thing you want to do is take the cumbersome boxes off. So being able to just take a bag out and take that out, it's great. The only thing slight criticism of the pannier, and the first time I used them, potentially it could have been my fault, not the panniers. They don't always shut true, so you have to make sure you're really good at shutting it. And I did ride away with one and it flopped open. Luckily I hadn't got anything in it at the time, but
none of your money came flying out.
It was just sack loads of money that I always carry with me, went flying out and everything else. But it'd be more underpants with me. But it was that was a slight issue, but it was the first time I went out on the bike and I learned straight away.
Can I add a negative to that
Absolutely.
During the launch I experimented to see if you could fit a crash helmet in the panniers, and you can't. Would you agree with that?
One pannier you can fit a crash helmet in if it's the right crash helmet. It's one of those. Not every crash helmet fits in, but I have found that I have had a lid in it. But I do wear a small lid, so shell cells might be smaller than your head.
People do say I'm quite big-headed.
Quite big-headed, yeah. Yeah, that's a whole other ball game. But I have found that one pannier will fit a helmet in. I don't know if you notice, obviously, where the positioning of the exhaust is means that particular pannier is shaped to fit around. Smaller. So it's slightly smaller. So it could be you were trying to fit it in the wrong pannier. I don't know.
Right, moving on. Top box comes as a part of the Voyage package.
Yeah, I opted to have the Voyage package because you get the top box.
You're going on to some voyages, weren't you?
I've done numerous voyages, I've done lots of different big trips, which we'll potentially cover off in a second, I think, with one of our other positives.
Yeah, I won't jump ahead.
With the Voyage pack, you get the top box, a tank bag. It's just those extra little bit of comforts. You get a better seat.
Yep.
You also get on the pegs, you get the rubberised.
Are these Voyage seats?
This is the comfort seat,
very nice.
This is the more comfortable seat. It's a bit more plush, and it's got the nice suede.
And the stitching?
It's just little details, but
stitching.
it is £1,500, so it does come with a price.
Right,
okay. So it does add a price to it.
But worth it?
I personally thought it was worth it if you're going to do a lot of miles
and
on
also,
the bike.
if you got this bike new from the shop, you could whack that on your PCP deal. And
absolutely,
it would
make very little difference.
Okay, quick shifter. It's an extra,
yep.
£270, but you like it?
I love the quick shifter on all bikes now.
So this is the manual one we better add, not the DCT?
No, I opted for the manual version to run as a long-term test bike. I did have a go on the DCT, which again we'll talk about in a moment. I've got used to running a quick shifter on the last 5 bikes, I think it has been, on all different bikes I've run. They've had quick shifters, so jumping on and off, particularly a bike like this, it just feels the right thing to have on it.
Makes it smoother, doesn't it, when you're short shifting?
Much smoother ride, and it's an element of laziness as well. It's
hard to go back when you've had a quick shifter, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, number 3, heated grips. Relatively easy to operate and heat up quickly. You could do with them right now, couldn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. It's free. It's I don't know. It was about a -1 ride in this morning.
Yeah.
But the heated grips. It's a couple of buttons to set them. So it took a while to learn how to do it, but once you've got it.
Where's the button through the dash?
So you have a button on your right-hand gear that you select, and then on the dash you then can up and down the actual temperatures. There's 5 heat settings, and other than a really cold day like today, I'd normally run it on a 3 or 4. Up to 5. They heat up pretty quickly, and they're useful. Again, it's something I would expect to be on a bike
and they are
of this
standard.
spec. Yeah,
that's a really big plus.
It is.
Things like Ninja 1000 SXs and GSX-Ss don't have that. And that's a really good plus. This is really well spec standard, isn't it?
Yeah.
The fuel range, got 20 litre tank, and you're nearing 60 mpg.
Yeah.
You need to stop before the bike needs fuel.
Absolutely, all the
Yeah.
time. Yeah, I can sit on it a good couple of hours on a motorway and you've still got fuel in the tank. You actually need to get off and stretch your legs.
Yeah.
Because as with all bikes, as comfortable as it is, I always find about 2.5 hours is my
Yeah, you've
limit
had
before
enough,
I
haven't
actually
you?
need to get off.
Yeah.
Yeah, normally it's you just want to shake your legs, don't you? So no, absolutely. But yeah, the tank range. The only thing I would say with it being such a large tank, that does actually impact on the weight. But again, we'll cover that off when we come to a negative.
I'd also like to add, with a bike with a big tank range, when it's really cold like this and you're going on a journey, and you've absolutely wrapped up, so you're hermetically sealed.
Yeah.
You don't want to stop at a petrol station and take everything off, put it back
No,
on again. So
fair
it's little
point.
things like that where a good
Yeah,
range is
it does
important.
make a difference. Yeah.
Okay, number 1. This bike is great for touring, great on open roads, sweeping bends and motorways, and munches up the miles. So that's what it's designed for, isn't it?
Absolutely. And the first big test I did with it, I collected it from Honda HQ with 20 miles on the clock, so it needed running in.
Yeah.
So I needed to do a 600 mile test on it, and rather than do it over a period of weeks, I literally rode from their head office and went straight off to Le Touquet. And,
wow.
and did 500 miles on the first weekend. It happened to be the same weekend as the Le Touquet beach race
Right.
in February 2022, so it was absolutely epic.
Brilliant.
And it was a really nice way of introducing myself to the bike.
Yeah.
And also it got those awful boring restricted miles done
Yeah.
in a way that was actually a little bit more entertaining than just dragging around at home.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, subsequently I've been up to Scotland. My husband and I went on holiday. He went in the car, I went on the bike.
Yeah.
Perfect holiday.
Yeah.
And spent a week touring up in Scotland. And then I've also been out with yourself. I came and met you out in Spa and did one of my
That's
solo...
right, not the convenience store, the racetrack.
Exactly that,
Yeah.
So I went into deepest, darkest Belgium for
Yeah.
a weekend with
Oh, that's
yourself.
good.
And it was pretty spectacular, and it
Yeah.
was, again, a lovely ride.
Yeah.
As with all my touring, if I go to the continent, I tend to try and use Eurotunnel.
Yeah.
Just for ease.
Just easy, isn't it?
And this was absolutely brilliant, literally roll on, roll off. And yeah, great way of using the bike. It's absolutely perfect.
Brilliant. Okay, so they're the good bits. Let's talk about the not so good bits. None of them are too damning. Number 10, a little bit uninspiring.
It's a bit of a beige bike,
Yeah.
to be fair. I absolutely love
silver.
riding it. Well, it isn't actually, it's sort of bronze, I think,
okay.
technically.
Yeah.
But it's one of those bikes where other bikes you'll go out and stand in your garage and smile. I've still got my own personal bike, it's a Ducati Monster, their little baby 695.
Yeah.
And I've had her for 15 years, or her. I've named her and everything. It's that sort of bike. I've got that. Daisy Duke, yeah. I've got that affinity with her. Whereas this, you sort of put it in the garage, shut the door, and I go back in the house, and I don't really think much more about it. So yeah, there's definitely not a love affair with it.
No, I agree. It's a little bit, just blends into the background, doesn't it?
It is.
Okay, number 9, the colours aren't great.
No,
Bland choices. You really wanted a shiny red one.
absolutely. The Honda, the racing Honda colour, this would look lovely in that. I know when I spoke to one of the gentlemen at Honda, they said they always introduce bikes of this kind in a more sort of conservative palette to start with. And this one, I think you can get black, white, and the colour that I've got, which we'll argue about, but it's sort of like bronzy,
Yeah.
a shiny beige. And he said in further models on, they may change the colours and make them a little bit more dynamic. But yeah, I think this in red would look stunning.
Yeah. Transform it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would, absolutely.
Number 8, so the screen. I'll talk about the screen again. It offers great protection, but it's difficult to alter. You nearly pulled the bike off the stand to get it to move. Yeah, so to adjust it, you got to...
It's a manual adjust, you need both hands.
Yeah.
I'd practically have it on the centre stand rather than the side stand, because I have actually lifted it off the side stand when I was trying to change it once. So to be honest, once it's in the position you want it in, I've not moved it since, because it was a bit of a battle.
You can't do it on the bike, on the move.
Oh, crikey, no.
I mean, I've seen someone do it, but they've literally been riding no-handed, stood on the pegs, yanking on the screen.
I'm not entirely sure that's the way I ride.
No.
Yeah.
It's very, very stiff. So, yeah, that's quite disappointing.
Yeah, it was slightly disappointing. I think for a bike with that added sort of benefit, to then make it so blooming hard to move it, it's, yeah.
Because sometimes you need a tool screen most of the time, but around town,
Well,
if it's raining round town, and if you're going through corners, like
Yeah.
on a nice road, you want a low screen, you don't want the screen in the way.
or the day I came out to Spa to you and I rode home in 40-degree heat because it was
Yeah,
that
you
heat
wanted a bit
wave.
of a-
I could have done with it being down, so I had a bit of air
Wind the window
blast.
down.
But yeah,
Okay, number 7, sun on the dash, which makes the screen hard to read.
yeah. If the sun's behind you, a day like today where it's a really bright sun, if that's behind you, you can't read anything on the dashboard. The only benefit is that it's got the TFT dash, but then there's also underneath a little digital readout that you can still see that, so your speed and things you can
Yep.
still pick up. But the TFT dash, absolute no go if the sun's shining.
That's a bit of an oversight, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's this second dash do?
It just has minimal information on it, so
Okay.
when we can highlight that when we get the keys
Yeah.
turned in the ignition. But yeah, it has basic information down there.
Okay. Right, number 6. Right, let me take a deep breath for this one. Packages for touring, quick shift. Additional prices are pricey. You fitted the top spec Voyager package, which is £1,466 with lights, deluxe pillion pegs, top box within a bag, tank bag, and a plush veloured covered seat plus labour cost to fit.
I think
Yeah.
with a bike of this spec, it would be nice. They've kept the base model a lower spec, obviously, to keep a price at a certain point, and it's your choice how you then build that package for yourself. But it would have been nice, say, for the panniers already being on, it would have been nice to have the top box and the tank bag already,
Yeah.
maybe. Things like the fog lights, they're a great addition, but adding 1,500 quid's worth of bits, I felt it was quite a lot of money onto the price, but then it does keep the actual RRP
But a
down.
bike like this you use for touring, you want those bits,
You
don't
do,
you?
yeah, so it's a bit of a negative.
Okay, number 5. There isn't one.
Oh, have I missed number 5 out? Oh,
So this
crikey.
is a top 9 list.
You can tell I do admin, can't you?
So number 4. Throttle response. It's jerky. You needed to play with the settings to make the engine braking the least invasive possible.
Yeah, it comes with 3 preset modes,
Rider modes.
rider modes
Yep.
already,
Yeah.
which have certain different settings, including engine braking. Or you then can have 2 that you can set your own. So I initially found that I was having it in the touring mode,
Yeah.
and the throttle response was really jerky. So I had a play around and I changed my own setting and reduced the engine brake. I felt that the setting that was causing the problems was the engine braking.
Yeah.
So the minute you let the throttle off, it was like, whoa,
Yeah.
because it's a big lumpy twin. So I adjusted with that. To be honest, now I ride mainly in touring setting because I've got used to the bike. But those first few weeks, I made my own unique setting.
Yeah.
So
Can I add something to that as well?
yeah, absolutely.
I would say the DCT version is even worse with the throttle because there's no way to feather the clutch, especially around
No.
town. So
Yeah.
the power just comes in a great big smash.
Absolutely, yeah.
And through corners, it's hard to regulate. So I think Hondas from top to bottom have got bad throttles for some reason.
Yeah, it's strange.
Yeah. Okay. Number 3, the switch gear. There's too many buttons on the left side, which makes it very overcomplicated. Well, this is like a 70s Casio
It's
calculator,
absolutely
isn't
ridiculous.
it? It's awful.
You look at it and I think, well, standing here now, what have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14
buttons.
different buttons.
Yeah.
And all of them do a different function, and some of them I've never used because I got to a point where I got so fed up of trying to work out how to use them, I didn't bother. So I worked out which ones I need,
Yeah,
and that's
kind
been
of
it.
memorise it.
That's just as I've.
And they're small as well, so with big gloves on, I'd
Absolutely,
imagine.
too fiddly. Yeah, too fiddly to use.
Yeah. Okay, number 2, plug and play. It's SH*C T.
It's absolutely awful.
When you say plug and play, what do you mean?
Yeah, well, plug and play. The idea is the sat nav and such works off your mobile phone. So
Okay,
there's
So that links to an app via its Bluetooth.
yeah, you have to use either the Android Auto or
Mm-hmm.
the Apple equivalent. I'm on Android. To make your phone hook up is easy enough, Bluetooth, so that all sets itself up. But then to operate the Android Auto side, you have to plug your phone into the dash. So we've got that. You also can't run it without a headset. So you've got phone, bike and headset all trying to talk to each other. I spent around 3 hours in the garage on one of the hottest days of the year trying to set it all up, to the point of I deadened the battery on the bike, because everything was just having to be on to try and get it all to connect up.
God.
I got to a point in the end where I had various different people try to help me out. I had one of the dealers sent me a video of how to use it. And I got it working in the garage perfect. The first time I went to try and use it, it was when I came to Spa to write to you, it broke. So it was like, that was that done. So I ended up, I borrowed off a friend a Garmin sat-nav, and I've had that wired in ever since, because I just got to the point where I was so fed up with it, I couldn't deal with it.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's such a pity, because it shouldn't be that hard.
No.
You know, I am a bit dim as far as technical things go.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's my forte. But it shouldn't be that difficult.
No, it should be a bit easier, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, the thing you like least about this bike is its weight. It's cumbersome and heavy to kind of push around and pedal around.
Yeah, it's 240 kilograms in weight,
Yeah.
which is a lump. And when you're trying to manoeuvre it around, where I live, we've got it's a very specific way of getting the bike into the garage, as everybody's houses are, but
Yeah.
I have to do it in a real set way. And what I did establish after running the bike in a very short space of time was, don't take it home with a full tank of fuel, because that loses up to 20 kilograms, because it's 20 litres, and that made a vast difference. The other thing I do as well, because I'm quite tall, I'm able to paddle around sat on it. I found when I was trying to manoeuvre it around off the bike, I was always a little bit nervous of it going away from me, because once it if this went, I'd never pick it up again, because
it's heavy, isn't it?
It is really, really heavy. On the move, you don't notice it.
Yeah.
You absolutely don't notice it on the move, but as you're trying to manoeuvre it around, one other thing I've thought of, obviously, as we've only got 9 negatives.
Oh, can we have a?
I can think of that 10th that I was missing.
Okay, thank you.
Round town riding.
Yep.
Where I found when I had the Tracer the previous year in 2021, it was actually quite a nice round town bike as well, because it was relatively slim, quite easy to manoeuvre. I find that this is a little bit cumbersome if you're trying to filter through traffic. It's not awful, but I wouldn't want to do a daily commute. This wouldn't be a bike that I'd want to use for everything, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It really is good for touring, and that's, I think, where it sort of
USP,
pitches
isn't it?
itself.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's really lots of really interesting points there, and that's why we run a long-term test fleet, because the things you've mentioned here are things you'd only find out living with a bike for a good period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've personally been able to run this for like almost 12 months, which is actually a long. Sometimes I've only got them for around 9 months, so having that little bit extra time to be able to play with the heated grips when it's cold, to really get used to living with it, and averaging sort of 500 miles a month on it, it's been a really good experience.
So you haven't prepared for this. I'm going to ask you a couple of things that you haven't written.
Okay.
Because I'm a tyre geek, so I'm always interested in tyres. So I see that you changed. This is your OE tyres you ran for a little while.
That's
and
right.
then you put these Michelin Road 6s on. So how do they compare?
I ran the other ones for about 4,500 miles, and they got to a point of being quite squared off. So I changed to these on actually your recommendation.
Thank you.
And they are a much better tyre. Yeah, they've got a nicer profile, and they inspire confidence in the wet as well.
What about I always find with Michelins, the comfort of them, the plushness of them is nice.
Yeah, absolutely. The way the bike rides on them, they're perfect.
Yeah. And how long have you had these on, did you say?
About 1,500 miles now.
And they still look
still
completely
look like brand new,
don't they?
Yep.
And good in the cold, good in the wet.
Absolutely.
Excellent. And one other thing, we touched on it slightly when I spoke about the throttle response, the DCT. You've had the chance to ride the DCT version, haven't you?
Yeah, I did a back-to-back test. My other half came out with me because he has a slight disability and can't change gear manually. So I put him on the DCT with myself riding the manual, but then halfway through the day we had a little bit of a swap, and I left him in a cafe and I went off for a ride.
Which he would have liked.
He would have loved that. He loves a bit of cake.
Yeah.
The DCT, I've ridden an earlier evolution on an NC700 back in about 2014, so quite a long while ago, and it's come on no end since then. It's much less invasive when you're riding.
Sometimes it's got a mind of its own, isn't it?
It has a little bit, but I actually really enjoyed riding with that facility rather than the gears, just for a change, to be honest. Whether I'd actually run a bike with that, I don't know. But for somebody in Mark's position, it meant he could ride a traditional bike rather than a scooter.
And he got on with it, okay.
And he got on absolutely fine with it. He loved it. The only thing he did pick up on again was the size of the bike. It was quite a big bike.
Yeah.
And he said he would have preferred it to be on something like a VFR size, as they don't do them anymore, obviously.
No, unfortunately.
But yeah, both of us found that the DCT was really nice to live with, and it did make the experience enjoyable riding.
Do you think
a
it's
bike.
worth the extra, the DCT?
I don't think I'd invest in the extra because I don't need it. But if you were somebody in a situation where it made a difference to you being able to ride or not, without question, absolutely, I'd opt for it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So the big question is, would you buy one?
To be honest, no, because it is more of a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I wouldn't buy one out and out to have in the garage. But if it was if I was able to have your fleet of bikes to do different things, absolutely, I'd pick on this for a touring one.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for showing us around your bike, and thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more long-term test videos coming up soon.